Okay, good to see you all again. It's been a couple of weeks since we've had this class. It's been exactly 7 evenings since I had a pie shoved in my face. And I saw the pictures afterwards, and was not aware that my girls had ice cream that they put on my head. And the goal was to put the waffle cones like sticking up so it would look like devil's horns, but one of them fell down into my lap. But the good news was that Myrna was able to get some exercise that night, because I tried to show her how much I loved her and care. I said, Myrna, covered in ice cream, come on, give me a hug. And her family told me later they hadn't seen her move that fast in years. So, yeah. So it's good that we can study Proverbs again. Please open up your Bibles to Proverbs chapter 1. We're going to start out tonight by looking at verses 10 through 19. That's Proverbs chapter 1 and verses 10 through 19. Okay, and I would like to have a volunteer start out by reading verse 10. Proverbs chapter 1, verse 10.
Proverbs 1:10, you said?
Yes.
My son, if sinners entice thee, consent thou not.
Okay. What's he basically saying there? What's another way to say that? Don't what? Don't listen to sinners? All right, so who's he talking to? Who is Solomon talking to in the verse? His son. Okay? So this is a dad, and he's talking to his son. So let's think of real world examples of this. Parents, what have you, or what will you, if you have young children, what will you eventually say to your son, to your daughter, that would be very similar to what he's saying here? How would we say this today to our children who are hanging out with their friends in school, and maybe they have some friends that they should not have? She said, if your friends jumped off a bridge, would you do that as well? Katie was 4 years old when the first time I said that to her. I felt like it was a milestone. I felt so proud. You know, that was when I really felt like a dad for the first time, you know. That's like the motto of all parents. Yes?
When you're friends.
I'm sorry?
When you're friends.
Get a microphone.
When your friends try to get you to do things that you know are wrong, don't follow them.
Okay. All right. Needed advice, and that's basically what he was saying back then, and that's basically real world modern day application, right? And while he's talking to his child, and so the first thing that's coming through our minds is, you know, teenagers and things like that. Is there peer pressure in the adult world?
Yes.
Is there peer pressure at work?
Nope.
It might not be about the exact same things as it was in high school, but it's pretty similar, isn't it? Something for us to think about, yes.
What I told my sons, and it applies to your kids, regardless how old they are, when they're being under pressure from their friends to go do this, or go with me, let's do the such and such, or let's go someplace, to tell them, my mom won't let me. And then their response is, your mom doesn't let you do anything. And I said, hey, it takes the emphasis off of you. And so it's not the kids' fault for not joining them. It's because their mama won't let them.
But that doesn't work in the adult world, because in the adult world, you can't say, well, my mom won't let me.
Thank you, John.
So, again, microphones. Go ahead.
Before you get to this, you should teach your children to choose their friends wisely, and do that by example also.
Which is basically the point of the whole passage, as we will see. Very good point. But in the adult world, when you're out of high school and you're out of college and everything, I can't do this because mom and dad won't let me. Well, yeah, you can if you want to. So you need something more. You need something stronger than your parents. Would you say that when let's say when it's the Christmas party at the end of the year, in the company Christmas party, and they're passing out the drinks, and it's your boss who comes up with a margarita, and here, have this. And you know that it's come down, you know that the bonuses, the end of the year bonuses and the New Year promotions are just 1 week away, right? And you know, because you've heard, that it's down between you and this other person. And it's a $2,000 bonus. And it's a raise that will increase your salary by $7,000. And your competition, you've seen, they're linked arm in arm with your boss, and they've already had 3 margaritas. And now your boss is coming over to you. Hey, join us here, have one. And you just know. You know that if you say, oh, that's okay, I don't drink, thank you, but no, then that there's at least the possibility, the probability maybe. Well, wait a second. She's really good at the job, but he's really good at the job. Well, at least she's social, so okay, I'll give it to her. Is that peer pressure? Yeah, it's a different kind. And yet it's really not a different kind than the kids go through. And in order to withstand that, how did he put it in verse 10? If sinners entice you, don't consent. In order for that to happen, there's gonna have to be some real strong conviction on your part. You know that verse that says, set your mind on the things above and not on the things of the earth? See, the temptation and the worry, well, she's going to get the promotion if I don't do this. That's setting your mind on the things of the world. But if you set your mind on the things above, where it's like, you know what, all right, I might not get this promotion, I might not get the raise, it might just come down to whether or not my competition has the margarita and I don't. All right, so I'm out $2,000 bonus, $7,000 raise. Here's that, and here's eternity in heaven. Eternity in heaven, I'd rather have that. But you got to really believe that. You got to really, really believe it. It has to be that God will reward those who diligently seek after Him. Hebrews 11:6. That faith has to be so strong that it's a given to you. It's just something that is as natural as expecting the sun to come up in the east tomorrow. Because if your faith's not like that, if you're focused more on the things of the world and, well, how will this affect me in the here and now? Because I really could use that extra $7,000. Well, if that's where the focus is, it'd be a whole lot easier. A whole lot easier to, as he said again, to let sinners entice you. Point being, adult auditorium class. Point being is we do a lot of looking down at the youth and saying, oh, peer pressure, oh, they're just so immature. They need to grow up. And, you know, sometimes though, I think we might not have gotten as far past that high school stage as we think we have. Yes.
My husband was in a job that the principal harassed him. Every time he came through to the teacher's workroom, he had some little comment. And finally, he told my husband, said, well, I can fire you, you know, or I can assign you someplace. And my husband had just passed the bulletin board, and they were looking for somebody to mow the yard. And he just went and got it, put it on the principal's desk and said, transfer me over there. He said, I was looking for a job when I found this one. And sometimes you have to do that. And I want to do a complete opposite thing. I have been in jobs because of the way I lived and because of the way I talked. I had coworkers who protected me, who spoke up for me, and they told people, don't tell her. That joke was funny, but don't tell Liz because she doesn't use that language. And so sometimes by the way we live, other people protect us. They might walk away, but still at certain times they do protect us. But you just have to be strong in yourself. And God always gives us a job. He always takes us to, maybe God doesn't want you to be there in that job. So this happened for a reason.
Very good points. Thank you for sharing. While Jim's talking, and by the way, 10 minutes into it, this is your fourth comment. Fourth comment. More. I want to hear from all of us. Let's get some more discussion here, because this stuff right here, this is applicable to all of us. This applies to all of us. So I want to hear from all of you, because this is real world. This Proverbs is real world application that applies to every single one of us. How does this impact you? How does this impact your day-to-day life? I want to hear from you, all of you. And the reason I do is because when we hear from each other, maybe we realize that we're not alone in this. The struggles that we have, the fears that we have, the concerns that we have, maybe we're not alone. What Liz just gave to us, that encouraged me quite a lot. Maybe when we hear from a lot of other people here, maybe we can get more out of this class than just Jon's perspective and one or two others. Think about that. Let's get more discussion. And that's not a dig on you. I just was wanting to say that anyway. Go ahead and give me your comment.
I was going to say, it's not always negative.
Yeah.
In other words, that situation you portrayed a while ago, the boss, I've had a similar situation and was told that later by the boss that he knew how I felt about things, and he was proud that I stood up for my principles instead of submitting to things that I didn't agree with. Mm-hmm. And he counted that as a positive attribute, and I was promoted for it.
You know, the New Testament talks about letting your light shine and letting people see your good works. I think sometimes when we think about how that applies to our life, we think of things like going to church, and reading our Bible, and maybe saying a prayer over lunch, and that's it. But actually, letting your light shine it has a lot more real world application than that. This right here, that's letting your light shine. So we have a comment over there and a comment right here. Go ahead.
Yeah. One time I was in the military and had to shovel snow off this building. And we were up there with the snow shovels, working away. And this one guy was always complaining. I said, I don't like to be up here either, but if you'd do more shoveling and less talking, we'd get done quicker.
Who over here? Yes. Yes.
Starting back to your original question for the children, if your parents set you up for success as a child and you can get a backbone when you're younger and incrementally grow through the teenage years or even middle school and college years, it helps when you're an adult. If you don't know what you're going to say before you get into a situation, you'll most likely choose the wrong one, the wrong answer. So yes, we have issues as adults, but sometimes if the parents didn't teach you when you were young, it becomes very hard. It's not an excuse. You still have to stand on your own at some point. But your parents setting you up for success as a child goes a long way into your adult years in a job situation or when your children have friends come over, that you can set a good example.
Excellent point. Excellent point. Yes, sir.
The scripture says, diligent seeking God. And it can't be, we have to be more of action than more words. Because most of the times, it's just situationships. Like whenever, I seek God whenever the situation is required. But diligently seeking Him means running after Him nonstop.
Very good point. Before we move on to the next set, any comments from up there? I remember when I interviewed here, very first interview in the middle of the class, there was people who up there who wanted to talk too. By all means, if you have a comment, get my attention. We'll make sure you get a microphone up there. Could I have a volunteer read verses 11 through 14? 11 through 14.
If they say, "Come with us, let us lie in wait for blood, let us ambush the innocent without cause, let us swallow them alive like Sheol, even whole as those who go down to the pit. We will find all kinds of precious wealth. We will fill our houses with spoil. Throw in your lot with us. We shall all have one purse."
All right, this is a dad talking to his kids, so let's have modern day real world application here. How would this be said today? How would this be said today between people who are, in high school or in college or in middle school? What would be some things that would be said today that go along with this? What are some scenarios that would come up? All right, leaving the school grounds. Okay. Let's go a little bit deeper because, leaving the school grounds, you'll get in trouble, but you won't lie and wait for someone's blood for leaving the school grounds. Depends on what you're doing.
That fellow right there is probably not by himself.
Yeah.
Okay. He's got friends behind him.
All right. The guy on the screen there is doing something very illegal that has high potential to either hurt or kill someone. Does anything like that happen? Does anything, are young people faced with anything like that? Yeah?
I was going to say, don't be a bully. It's up to somebody.
Okay, there you go.
Don't be a bully. In fact, you should be the opposite of bully. You should be protecting those who are being bullied. Avoid gangs, right? That's what we see kids joining that and they don't need it.
Very good, very good. Here's what I get out of that. Notice how it's being described here. Here, come with us. Here's what we're going to do. But here's what's going to happen. Look very carefully at verse 13 and 14. This is going to be very profitable for us. You will not regret going in with us on this. You're going to get a lot of money. It's going to be more than worth it. Trust me. I wonder how many people who are serving time in prison right now are looking back and saying, you know what, this isn't nearly as fun as was advertised. But let's put it not just let's take it away from the illegal activity. This isn't something that happens today all that much, but how many of you all remember the Marlboro Man? And do you remember the advertisements on TV for smoking? And they make it look like it's the most fun thing in the world, and the only time that things like cancer and emphysema and birth defects and the high death rate and things like that, the only time that's mentioned is in the very, very, very small print that's at the bottom of the screen. What about the commercials for beer that are on TV? In every one of those commercials, what's happening? It's a party, right? It's usually a party, and everyone's having fun, and everyone's relaxed, and they're having the time of their life. They're skiing down a slope in Aspen. They're on the beach. They're at a pool, and they're diving in, and they're all good looking, and there's nothing ever shown in those commercials about the car that's wrapped around a tree and the big, huge bloodstain that's on the windshield with the hole in it with the guy's head sticking out, where he is either dead or in a coma. You don't ever talk about that. You see, that is how sin is advertised. That's how sin has always been advertised. The very first sin, God told you that. He didn't mean it, because here's the truth, Satan says. If you disobey God and you do this, then you'll be as wise as God. Don't you want to be as wise as God? It's going to be very profitable for you. It'll be worth it. Trust me. Never did work out that way, did it? Yes.
That's why you should always watch what your children are watching. The beer commercials, I can remember, go for the gusto. Like, you climb the highest peak in the world, and so you drink a beer. Mm-hmm. So with my children, I would say, why can't you have a Coke? And substitute something that they could have. But you need to be watching what your children are listening to, because that's where you can teach. But that might bring you such and such, or that can result in such and stuff. And a lot of parents don't know what their kids are, and sometimes we don't know what spouses are looking at. I mean,
that is true.
You have to be involved with the people that you live with, and you have to have a relationship with God.
And that's a really good point. But let's go even deeper in application of this, because there might be, I would have to take a guess that hopefully everyone, but if not everyone, at least the majority of the people in this room are, the examples I've given so far about the beer and the partying and the drunk driving, that doesn't really apply. So let's think about the things that do apply. Think about the things that you are tempted with, and because it's a temptation, that means that you're not being tempted to do things that you would never do. No, you're being tempted to do things that sound pretty attractive. Think about the temptations that you personally struggle with, and you're weighing the pros and cons. Doesn't this have any relevance? Isn't what makes it a temptation isn't it if I know that God said don't do this, and I know that the wages of sin is death and hell. I understand all of that, but I really want to go ahead and do this because I believe that if I go ahead and do this, then at least short term right now, there's going to be some good things that will come to me. Maybe it'll be no more than just personal satisfaction. Maybe that's what it'll be. I'll feel better about myself, or whatever it will be. It's the advertisement for sin, whether it be drinking and driving, or whether it be more relevant to the temptations that every single one of us face ourselves in our own lives. The advertisement for those sins, sin is always put in the best light. It always is. That's what makes it a temptation. If it was not put in the best light, it would not be a temptation, right? Yes, go ahead.
I taught the college class last fall, and it was 12 or 13 weeks, and we talked about their temptations every week. And some of the stories that they would share every week would be alcohol, tobacco, drugs, language. We talked about dating. And the most awkward one is I told a story about an STD. A student I was teaching in high school stayed in my classroom. Everybody had left, and he said, I just need to talk to someone. I just tested positive for an STD. That's something they don't teach you in teaching classes, how to interact with. But some of these kids, this was a young kid who was stuck with this the rest of his life. But we're seeing these kids interact with a lot of this stuff, middle school, 6th, 7th, 8th grade, drugs, alcohol, sex, it's all everywhere. I think the temptations have changed a lot in the last 50 or 60 years. I think we're looking at different generations in the room, and I think we're looking at different things.
All right. Roosevelt?
I think it's just, like being human. We want what we want when we want it. And we don't wait for what God has for us. I think the fact that we're so impatient and we just want what we want, but we're not willing to wait on God's terms.
Very good point. Let's see, was there anyone over here too? All right, Jim. And after Jim, we'll have Dan here read verses 15 and 16.
One of my pet peeves is I can't watch sports anymore because of all the betting advertisements. And lotteries have done the same thing. When you get a big amount of a $1 billion lottery fixing to go, they really push that and make it really look enticing. You could be a billionaire.
Yeah, they don't really talk about the drained bank accounts, and yeah, that's why they have the steak dinners waiting for you right at the airport. The $5 steak dinners at Las Vegas. I remember I saw a movie one time where the narrator was talking about the gambling in Las Vegas, and he was like, and while mom and dad are blowing Junior's college fund and grandma and grandpa are in one weekend draining 95% of their retirement savings. No one talks about that. Last comment before we move on.
You mentioned advertising. Need to explain to the kids and even us, we need to understand that there are consequences to what we do. And when we make bad decisions, there are bad consequences sometimes, and they need to understand that, and we need to get them to understand that advertisements, they might as well be lies. Not all of them, but it's when someone's advertising something that is wrong or sinful, it is a lie.
Very good. And I'm glad that you said that because, speaking of consequences, verses 15 and 16.
My son, do not walk in the way with them. Keep your foot from their path, for their feet run to evil, and they make haste to shed blood.
All right. So here's the thing about sin. It does not, the temptation to sin does not let you know about the terrible consequences that are waiting for you. Satan did not in any way mention hell to Eve. He did not mention at all the being kicked out of paradise, the loss of innocence. He didn't mention any of that. He didn't mention the pain in pregnancy. He did not mention the working a lot harder than you are right now, but the sweat of your brow, and the thorns and the thistles. He didn't mention any of that. No, he made it look the absolute best that it could look, and that's the thing about temptation. And when we're being tempted, here's the thing to remember. When we are being tempted, and all you're doing is thinking about what good this might do for you right now, just stop and think, okay, but if I go ahead and do this, what are the negative consequences in this life and in the life to come? Make yourself think about that. And maybe that might just be the key to you resisting. Let's keep reading. Verse 17. Someone read verse 17 for me.
Surely in vain the net is spread in the sight of any bird.
All right. Have you guys ever watched the animal documentaries where and you're just saying, how can that bird or that fish or whatever, it's obvious. And yet they just go right into it. The point that he's making here is the birds might even see the trap being set. They might be up in the tree and they might be watching that net being laid out, the snare being laid. They might be watching it, and yet they'll go ahead and they'll fly into it anyway. What God's saying for us, what Solomon is saying to his kid, but what God is saying for us is when you are tempted, when you are being tempted to sin, choose to see that trap, the negative consequences ahead of time. And don't be like the bird says, well, I'm just going to do it anyway. I know that it worked out bad for this person, this person, this person. It ain't going to work out bad for me. No, don't be like that. See the trap ahead of time and choose to avoid it. Verses 18 and 19. Someone read that for me.
But they lie in wait for their own blood. They ambush their own lives.
Verse 19 also.
So are the ways of everyone who gains by violence. It takes away the life of its possessors.
Real world examples of this. Give me some real world examples of this. First of all, we'll talk about violent sins like he's been talking about, the thieves basically lying in wait to violently steal from someone. What are real world examples of what so many times tends to be waiting for them at the end? You know what? Yeah. You know what comes to my mind? Almost, I think just last year, the year before, it was 100 years ago, the anniversary. John Dillinger, famous bank robber of the 20s, who met his very violent death walking out of a Clark Gable film in middle America. The FBI was waiting for him. And he got shot right in the face. Was all the money that he stole worth it? Or what about Bonnie and Clyde? That's another one. How many of y'all saw that movie? Yeah? Remember the end? What about Butch Cassidy and the Sundance Kid? Remember that? You know? Remember how it just freezes with them coming out, and then you hear the gunfire, you know? William H. Bonney, Billy the Kid. Last words he spoke were Spanish, ¿Quién es? Who is that? Because he didn't realize that the sheriff was sitting by his friend's bed, and sheriff knew who he was in the darkness and knew that he was a pretty fast draw, and so the sheriff wasn't going to give him the chance to raise his hands because he had already escaped from jail just 2 months earlier, so he shot him right dead in the heart immediately. But you see the temptations. Well, go ahead and help us stick up this grocery store or these people that are walking down. You don't hear about the potential for violent death at the end at the hands of the cops, or if you're arrested and put into prison, the things that happen in prison as well. No one ever really thinks about that. And so here is the application for us. And again, let's take this. I want you all in your minds to take this out of the example that he's giving, because if you don't take it away from the example that he's giving, it's very easy to dismiss it and forget about it, because we're like, okay, well, I mean, I'm not ever going to rob anyone, so that's fine. But think about the things that you are tempted with, that you personally are tempted to do. The sins that you struggle with, and realize that in the end, it will always cost more than it's worth. Both in this life, what just came to mind is fentanyl. But yes, let's talk about that.
Gossip. I said there's nothing more dangerous than gossip, and probably the biggest problem in the church today. Just saying.
Have any of you ever been gossiped about? Raise your hand. It's not going to be on the camera. Go ahead, raise your hand. All right. Was it the best feeling in the world? It was, wasn't it? I mean, when you found out that people were talking about you behind your back, that just made your week, didn't it? I mean, you were on cloud 9, weren't you? Do you remember the big grin that came on your face when you found out that they were lying about you, and that they were spreading the rumor? Everyone at work believes this. Everyone at church believes this. I mean, that was the best day of your life, wasn't it? And please note the sarcasm in my voice here. And it made you feel terrible. Now, think about that when you're tempted to gossip. Think about that. Think about the fact that if you go ahead and do this, which seems so harmless, I mean, it's just words. I mean, it's not sticking people up with a gun. It's harmless comparatively. No, it's not. No, it's not. And if we would just, when we're tempted to sin, including the sins that we think are not that big a deal, which, let's be honest, that's how we think about gossip. As long as it's not being done to us, then it's a really big deal. But when we're being tempted to do it to others, it's not that big a deal, and it'll make me feel better because I'm mad at them. And so it'll make me feel better to spread this. Well, just before you give into the temptation, remember that it will cost more than you think. And we're not just talking about the damage and the danger to your own soul for all eternity. I mean, it can, and many times it does. It will ruin lives. It will ruin friendships. It will ruin reputations. You yourself have experienced it. Why would you want that to be done to others? It usually does. Always remember that the person because you can be tempted to gossip, you can also be tempted to gossip in a passive sense, where there's the active gossiper that's coming to you, but you're allowing it to happen. So you're like, oh, really? Okay, tell me more. Just remember, if If they're talking about someone else to you, they are talking about you to someone else. It's a guarantee. It's a guarantee. All right. Yes, sir.
That's pretty much why I pray for our young people, because we have so many young people that are going to school and they're trying to finish school and they hear gossip. They hear so much gossip to the point that they want to kill themselves.
Yeah. Beth, one of the things that she cares about the most, because she's a media specialist now in elementary school, but before it was in middle school. We all have things that we're passionate about that we just want to talk about. Well, Beth's is the danger of social media to kids and how it really has a terrible impact on kids' lives. Sin always costs more than it's worth. All right, next week, here's what we're talking about. Okay, we're going to finish out the chapter. I'd like for you guys to read verses 20 through 33 of the end of the chapter, and then also read the first 9 verses of chapter 2 as well, where God describes the type of wisdom that he is offering in the Proverbs, and he personifies it. So God is giving his own advertising here. Try it my way. And here's what can come from it. Great discussion, y'all. Be reading this, and we'll pick it up next week. Let's close in prayer. Father, we thank you for this time that we can study your word, and I pray that what we've discussed tonight and what we've studied from your word, I pray that we can take it to heart and not forget it as we walk out of this room, that we can not only teach it to our children and our grandchildren, but that we can allow ourselves, all of us as adults, to be taught it and to follow it. Help us to grow wiser from what we've learned tonight. In Jesus' name I pray. Amen. Thank you all.